Daniel Reeves built his ice cream empire from the ground up, but no one in this small shop knew who he was. Disguised as a regular customer, he just wanted to experience his business from the other side of the counter. But when he overheard two girls whispering, what they said stopped him cold. The little bell above the ice cream parlor door chimed as Daniel Reeves stepped inside. The place had the same warm, inviting scent he remembered from years ago: fresh waffle cones, rich vanilla, a hint of melted chocolate. But no one recognized him. Not the teenage cashier behind the counter, absent-mindedly scrolling on her phone. Not the two girls sitting by the window, chatting over their sundaes. And that's exactly how he wanted it. Dressed in jeans, a hoodie, and a baseball cap, he looked like any other customer, which was perfect. Because Daniel wasn't here as the billionaire CEO of Reeves Creamery. He wasn't here as the man whose name was stamped on every napkin, every sign, every tub of premium ice cream in this place. He was here to see the truth. Was the service as good as his managers claimed? Were the employees treating customers right? Was his company still the place he had envisioned? Stepping up to the counter, he cleared his throat. The girl behind the register sighed, putting her phone away with visible annoyance. "What can I get you?" Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Strike one." But before he could order, he heard something from the girls by the window, something that stopped him cold. "I feel so bad for her," one of them whispered. The other girl sighed, stirring her half-melted ice cream. "I know. She's been here for years and now they're just getting rid of her." Daniel's grip tightened around his wallet. Getting rid of who? The first girl shook her head. "She's like the only reason people even come here. And the way the manager treated her, it's disgusting." Daniel's pulse ticked up. He turned slightly, pretending to glance at the menu, but his entire focus was on them now. The second girl exhaled. "I heard she's here today, working her last shift." Daniel's jaw clenched. Something was very, very wrong, and he was about to find out exactly what. Daniel kept his expression neutral, but inside, his blood was boiling. Who were they talking about? And why was one of his employees being forced out of the business he built? Still, he didn't react. Not yet. Instead, he turned back to the cashier, who was tapping her nails impatiently against the counter. "You gonna order or what?" she huffed. Daniel forced a small smile. "Vanilla cone." She rolled her eyes, rang it up without a word, and turned to Scoop. "Strike two." As she handed him the cone with zero enthusiasm, Daniel made a mental note. Customer service in this store was a disaster. He took his ice cream and casually moved toward the back of the shop, taking a seat near the two girls. He needed to hear more. Just then, the swinging kitchen door opened and a woman walked out. Daniel's stomach dropped. He knew her. Margaret. She had worked at this store since day one of his first hires, loyal, hard-working, the kind of person who made customers feel at home. And now? She looked tired, defeated. She wiped her hands on her apron, adjusting the glasses on her nose, before forcing a small smile at the girls by the window. "You two enjoying everything?" The girls smiled sadly. "Yeah, but we're really going to miss you, Miss Margaret." Margaret's smile faltered for a second, before she quickly recovered. "Oh, don't worry about me, sweethearts. Things change." Daniel's jaw clenched. This wasn't right. The girl from before frowned. "But why do you have to leave?" Margaret hesitated. Then she sighed. "It's not my choice, honey." Daniel gripped his ice cream cone so tightly it nearly cracked. Not her choice? Before he could stop himself, he stood up and walked toward the counter. The teenage cashier barely looked up. "Need something else?" Daniel's voice was calm. Too calm. "Where's the manager?" She frowned. "Why do you care?" Daniel set his ice cream down, slowly pulling off his baseball cap. The two girls gasped. Margaret's eyes widened. The cashier's face paled. because now they recognized him, and the entire shop went silent. "Go get the manager," Daniel said, his voice low and steady. "Now." What happened next would change everything. The color drained from the cashier's face as she stared at him, her mouth slightly open. She didn't need to ask who he was. She already knew. Daniel Reeves, the owner, the billionaire, the same man whose face was in every business magazine, the man whose name was literally on the sign outside. She swallowed hard. Now, Daniel repeated, his voice sharp. The girl nearly tripped over herself as she rushed to the back office. Margaret, still standing near the counter, looked stunned. "Daniel," she whispered. Daniel turned to her, his expression softening. "Hey, Margaret." Her eyes filled with emotion, but before she could say anything, a tall man in a pressed button-down shirt stormed out from the back. "What's going on out here?" the manager barked, looking irritated. His name tag read Frank. Daniel crossed his arms. "That's exactly what I'd like to know." Frank frowned. "And you are—" Daniel arched an eyebrow. "You're joking, right?" The moment recognition hit, Frank visibly stiffened. His confident stance faltered, and his forehead broke out in a sweat. "Mr. Reeves," he stammered, I wasn't expecting—" "You weren't expecting me to walk into my own store?" Daniel asked coolly. "That's funny, considering I own every single one of these locations." Frank forced a nervous chuckle. "Of course, sir. What brings you—" Daniel cut him off. "Why is Margaret being forced out?" Frank blinked rapidly. Well, Daniel tilted his head. "No excuses, no lies. Just answer the question." The entire shop had gone silent. The two girls by the window were watching with wide eyes. Even the customers had stopped eating, sensing that something huge was happening. Frank swallowed hard. "Margaret's been here a long time, sir. We thought maybe it was time for some fresh faces, new energy." Daniel let out a slow breath. This was exactly the kind of corporate nonsense he hated. "Let me get this straight," he said, his voice dangerously calm. "You decided to push out the one employee in this store who actually cares about customers? The same Margaret who's been here since day one, who probably knows more about this place than you ever will?" Frank's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Do you even know how much people love her?" Daniel continued. "Because I just sat over there and heard two customers say they only come here because of her." Frank had no response. Daniel took a step closer, lowering his voice so only Frank could hear. "You know what really pisses me off?" Frank gulped. What, sir?" Daniel smiled coldly. "People like you, who treat good employees like they're disposable." Then, before Frank could utter another word, Daniel turned to Margaret. "Margaret, do you want to leave this job?" Margaret, still stunned, shook her head. "I love it here." Daniel nodded, then turned back to Frank. "Congratulations, you're fired." Frank's eyes nearly popped out of his head. What? Sir, please, Daniel held up a hand. "Save it. Margaret is in. You're out. Effective immediately." The entire shop erupted in whispers. The teenage cashier looked like she might pass out. Frank stammered, his face red. You can't just—" Daniel smirked. "I own the company. I can do whatever I want." Frank stood there, speechless. Daniel turned back to Margaret. "How would you feel about a promotion?" Margaret blinked rapidly. A what?" Daniel smiled. "You've been running this place better than he ever has. You should be manager." Margaret gasped. "Daniel, I don't know what to say." "Say yes." Tears welled in her eyes. Then slowly she nodded. "Yes." Daniel grinned. "Good. Because this place just got a whole lot better."